Hello everyone, this is Anthony Wyckoff with Embrace Tutoring, and in this video we'll be covering SAT Math Practice Test 9. Please remember these videos provide additional explanations and content review, but you'll always want to attempt the problems independently. Please feel free to subscribe to our YouTube channel page and ask questions along the way. Okay, so let's get started. Now, before we begin, we want to really understand how to best approach and tackle the SAT math problems, essentially how to think about them. One major tip that we will tell you is that everything is there for a reason or for a purpose, so your overall goal is to always figure out how to utilize the given information. So the three-step process that we're going to use in order to break this down is step one, you always want to be able to read the problem and identify the type of concept being assessed, whether it's circles, ratios, linear expressions, exponents, etc. You then want to be able to evaluate what is given in the problem and think how you can utilize the given information to answer the problem. And then finally, you always want to be able to solve the problem by connecting the given information to the necessary math computations, such as formulas, equations, inequalities, etc. But always remember, everything is there for a reason, and you're going to want to do your best in order to connect what they're asking you to solve for to what is being provided or what is given.
Problem 1 says, what value of x satisfies the equation of 3x plus 3 equals 27? Now, hopefully you can quickly understand that this is just a basic algebraic expression, and what I want to do is solve and simplify for x. So I'm going to line up 3x plus 3 equals 27. I'm then going to subtract 3 from both sides in order to get 3x equals 24. I'm then going to divide with 3 from both sides in order to isolate and solve for x. So I get 3x over 3 equals 24 over 3, which will then give me x equals 8. So x equals 8 is going to be my best answer, making B the answer to number 1. Okay, here we have problem number 2. It says 2 units of length used in ancient Egypt were cubits and palms, where 1 cubit is equivalent to 7 palms. The Great Sphinx statue in Giza is approximately 140 cubits long. Which of the following best approximates the length in palms of the Great Sphinx statue? And what I'm noticing quickly is that they are actually giving you some sort of unit conversion here, where it's 1 cubit equals 7 palms, and then they are specifying the unit to be in palms, so this is a standard unit conversion problem. What I want to do is understand that the question is asking you to solve for how many palms will come out of 140 cubits, right? It says approximately 140 cubits long. Which of the following best approximates the length in palms of the statue? So here they tell you that the statue is 140 cubits, and they want to know how many palms is that statue. So then what I want to do is I'm going to take 140 cubits times 7 palms over 1 cubit, and I get this value, or this unit conversion, from what is previously given in the problem, where 1 cubit equals 7 palms. And the key to this, or any unit conversion problem for that matter, is to simply make sure that my numerator here of what I start with is going to be opposite or sort of across from the denominator of what I'm putting for my unit conversion. And the reason why I need to put this in the denominator of the unit conversion is so that way I isolate and solve for palms in the numerator or at the top, and my cubits will actually end up canceling. So my answer here is going to be 980 palms, which would make D my best answer. Okay, problem number 3. Here it says, if 2n over 5 equals 10, what is the value of 2n minus 1? Now, what you first notice is that they actually want you to solve for 2n minus 1, not necessarily 2n over 5 equals 10. But what I want to do first is solve and isolate using the algebraic expression 2n over 5 equals 10. I want to solve and isolate for n, and then I want to plug it into 2n minus 1. So when I solve and isolate for n, I'm going to cross multiply, and I'm going to get the 5 times the 10, which is what gives me my 2n equals 50. I'm then going to divide by 2 on both sides, and I'm going to get n equals 25. And now I'm going to plug this back in, and I'm going to get my 2n minus 1, and remember my n, once again, is going to be 25 here, so I'm going to plug this in, and then I get 2 times 25 minus 1, which will give me 50 minus 1, which will equal 49. So 49 is going to be my best answer, which is B, so 3 is B. Now, number 4, here I see which of the following values of x is not a solution to the equation above. And I could do a number of different things, like I can solve, I can simplify, factor, and then essentially though, the one key thing that you'll always have to remember is that even if you solve, simplify, and factor, you'll then still have to plug in. So the fastest way to do these types of problems, given the fact that I have a radical here, as well as x's, is I'm simply going to plug these in. And I'm going to plug in first 0 because it's generally the easiest. When I plug in 0 to my radical x squared equals x, I get 0 squared under the radical equals 0. I'll then get 0 equals 0. So this does work. So this is a possible solution, making this not a possible answer choice, right? Because I'm looking for which of the following is not a solution to the equation above. So 0 is a possible solution. So B will not work. Now I'm going to plug in 1. And then I'm going to get 1 squared under the radical. So radical 1 squared equals 1. Well, this will work because radical 1 will simplify to become 1 equals 1. And this will also be a possible solution. And now I'm going to plug in negative 4. And I could move on and do 3, but given the fact that I've plugged in 2 positive values, I'm going to try the negative to really see where that goes. And here I get my radical negative 4 squared equals negative 4. And this is going to become radical 16 equals negative 4. And then I'm going to get my positive 4 equals negative 4. Now, do you remember that on the SAT, they generally follow the principal square rule, which means that when you have a radical here of something, and they're generally going to focus on the positive value, not necessarily the negative value, because in traditional math class, this could be plus or minus 4, but on the SAT, they generally follow the principal square rule, which means that this would be a positive value, which means that A is actually my answer choice. And you're welcome to plug in 3 as well to double check, but you'll notice that 3 will be a possible solution. So A is definitely the best answer choice. Now, question number 5 and 6 both refer to the following information, and you see a large table and graph here. I'm actually going to skip this because I want to focus on what the question is asking me first. It says, of the following, which best approximates the temperature in degrees Fahrenheit of the coffee when it is first removed from the heat source? Now, I want to quickly scan up, and I want to notice that they're giving me a unit here for temperature. So I scan up, and I notice that's on my y-axis, and my time since the cup was removed, or heat source in minutes, is on my x-axis. So I want to pay attention to those two things because in this case, I am trying to find the y value. I'm trying to find the y value of when it is first removed from the heat source. And first removed, that the time is essentially 0, right? So I'm going to be looking for when the coffee was first removed, x equals 0. So it's going to be in this range here, right, of kind of these parameters on the graph. And then I'm going to understand that I'm trying to approximate the value between 190 and 200. So on the SAT, they're always going to give you some sort of range. So what I mean by 90 and 200 is I'm looking at this dot here, right? I'm looking at this data point, and I'm approximating. I think this is probably like 190, maybe 195 and 200. I notice it does not go over 200, but I also notice it's slightly higher than in the middle. So it's somewhere between 190 and 200. And I know my answer choices aren't going to be so close to each other that it's going to be pretty definitive, which makes D my best answer because this is then going to be 195 for D. Now, once again, problem 6 is referring to the same table and graph. And in this instance, they are saying during which of the following 10-minute intervals does the temperature of the coffee decrease at the greatest average rate? Well, decrease means that it's going to be obviously declining, and here it says the temperature. So once again, we're talking about the y value. What's interesting here is it gives me a following 10-minute interval. So if I quickly skim, and even looking up here, it looks as though these are all in 10 minutes. So I don't need to do any additional math in terms of like converting it to 10 minutes because here I have 0, then 10, then 20, then 30, then 40. And it doesn't even tell me, it says of the coffee immediately after being removed from the heat source at a 10-minute intervals thereafter. So basically what I'm saying is that I'm paying attention to the rate because I won't have to change this. Like if they told me in 20-minute intervals or 30-minute intervals, then I would have to pay attention to that. But because the 10-minute intervals are the same throughout, then it's easier for me just to understand what I'm really looking for is where the decrease of the average rate is really going to be what is the steepest slope downward. Right? My steepest slope downward is going to kind of appear here, right? It's where essentially on the actual test, what you want to do is take your pencil and line these dots up and see where your pencil on test day is going to have the greatest or the steepest slope decreasing. And it looks as though it's going to be somewhere between 200 and I would say right here, right? So it's going to be somewhere between like 0 and 20, 0 and 10 realistically, but I know 0 needs to be a part of my answer because this is the steepest slope. So this is going to occur between 0 and 10 minutes according to my answer choices. So A is going to be my best answer for question number 6. Now, question number 7, what I immediately notice is that I see 2 triangles. I always want to pay attention to the fact that the figure's not drawn to scale, which is simply alluding to the fact that if they don't necessarily give you the angles within, then you can't just assume that what an angle is going to be. And then here it says in the figure above, AD intersects BE at C. If x equals 100 degrees, what is the value of y? Now, the first thing I want to target is where is y, so that way I know what I need to work towards. Then I want to quickly understand where's x here, right, in terms of the b, and I want to kind of quickly understand what are they asking me to do. Well, these are triangles problems, and one of the major rules of triangles is just understanding that the sum of the angles within the triangle is going to be 180 overall. And my sum here, referring to the first triangle for angle A plus angle B plus angle C, is going to be 180 degrees. Now, if I plug in x theoretically, right, which in this case is angle B, then I get 20 degrees plus 100 degrees plus C degrees right here is going to be 180. I can then subtract those things, right? I can combine my like terms to get 120, and I can subtract them in order to get angle C. Now, the reason why I like getting angle C, where C is going to be 60 degrees, is because now I have vertical angles. Now, one quick thing you want to remember within geometry is that vertical angles are when you were intersecting, and essentially these angles are going to be equivalent, right? Like the X that's forming here. So this angle C is going to be equivalent to this angle C. So that helps me because now this angle C on this side is going to be 60 degrees. And now I can use this information along with the full sum of the full triangle for CDE to figure out what is angle Y. So C plus Y plus E is going to be 180 degrees, and we know that C is 60 according to the vertical angle principle, and we know that E is already 40 degrees because that's previously given. So if I subtract both of these off, right, so 60 plus 40, my like terms, and then I'm going to subtract my 100 from my 180, right, so 100 plus y equals 180. I'm then going to subtract 100, and I get y equals 180 minus 100, and then I get y equals 80. So y should be 80, and yes, so C is going to be my best answer choice for question number 7. Now, question number 8 says, the line graphed in the xy plane below models the total cost in dollars for a cab ride y in a certain city during non-peak hours based on the number of miles traveled x. I quickly notice this is a linear line. I also notice that it's starting at a distance of 0. I have cost dollars in y and distance traveled in x for miles. Going down to the problem, it says, according to the graph, what is the cost for each additional mile traveled in dollars of a cab ride? What I want to pay attention to is the word each, which means this is saying that what is the cost, meaning what is the increase in y, right, for each additional mile traveled in dollars as I move 1 unit, right, as I move 1 mile every time. One other quick tip I will give you is pay attention to the units down here at the bottom because this says each, that's only referring to 1. And if this wasn't in ones, right, if this wasn't going 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, for example, then you would have to do some additional math just to kind of make it equal to 1. But in this case, it's rather kind of, I would say, simplistic. So now as we're attempting to find what is the cost of each additional mile, one quick tip that you want to pay attention to, given the fact that this is a linear line, is that really this is referring to the slope of the line. So the cost of each additional mile traveled is going to be represented by the slope of the line, and the quickest way to do this is just using rise over run. So I'm gonna find 2 points that are fairly easy to detect on the line that make the most sense, and I'm probably going to try to double check it and see if I can replicate this more than once. So here I pick this point here, and I'm also going to pick probably this point here, and then I'll probably go up again and pick this point here. Right? So I'm going to go up 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I'm going to go over 2. So I'm up 4 over 2, and I'm going to do this again to see if it matches, and I'm going to go up 4. It does, over 2, right? And then, so that means that my rise over my run, given my slope, is going to be up 4 over 2, which will be equivalent to 2. And that means that that is essentially going to be my price for each additional mile. A should be my best answer. Okay, so problem number 9. The first thing I notice is that I have a table filled with a lot of information here. and I have text down here. So I'm actually going to skip the table, and I notice that my answer choices are in fractions, which generally refers to some sort of proportion or, yes, a probability problem. So let's read. It says, on Tuesday, a local gas station had 135 customers. The table above summarizes whether or not the customers on Tuesday purchased gasoline, a beverage, both, or neither. Based on the data in the table, what is the probability that a gas station customer selected at random did not purchase gasoline? Now, when attempting to solve probability problems, one quick tip I will give you is attempt to do the denominator first, or start with the denominator first in terms of the language. So when we go back, it says, based on the data in the table, what is the probability that a gas station customer selected at random? And this is the key here. It says, out of all of the gas station customers selected at random on that day. So individuals who attended the gas station on that day did not purchase gasoline. So that means that we're talking the full total. So the full total of 135 individuals. Now, that also means that the people who did not purchase gas are the 50, right? The people gasoline not purchased but did attend the gasoline station overall. So 50 individuals did not purchase gas out of the total of 135 individuals who did come to the gas station on that day, which makes the probability for this question equal to 50 over 135, right, for my desired outcomes over my number of possible outcomes, which makes D my best answer to question number 9. Okay, question number 10 is Washington High School randomly selected freshmen, sophomores, juniors, and senior students for a survey about potential changes to next year's schedule. Of students selected for the survey, 1/4 were freshmen and 1/3 were sophomores. Half of the remaining selected students were juniors. If 336 students were selected for the survey, how many were seniors? So what you'll notice is that they only give you two values for two groups out of it. So what you can do with that in terms of the ratios and proportions is really just say, okay, well, you have one out of this total population, 1/4 are going to be freshmen and 1/3 are going to be sophomores. And we don't know the amount of juniors and we don't know the amount of seniors. However, we do know that half of the remaining selected students were going to be juniors, which means the other half obviously are going to be seniors. So the best way to do this problem is just to simply say, okay, well, let's start deducting. Like, what can we figure out? Well, if 1/4 were freshmen, I'm going to take my total population, multiply by 1/4, I'm going to get 84 students. And if 1/3 were sophomores, I'm going to take my total population, multiply it by 1/3, and I'm going to get 112 students. I'm now going to take both of these values and I'm going to subtract them off. And what I'm trying to do here is get my amount of remaining students, because I know that out of the 140 students, I know half of the remaining selected students were juniors, and the other half, therefore, are going to be the seniors, right? If half are the juniors, then the other half have to be the seniors. So the seniors then are going to be 1/2 of 140, which is then going to be 70. So juniors are going to be 70 students, seniors are going to be 70 students, freshmen are 84 students, and sophomores are 112 students. So here, in this case, because my seniors are 70, that's what the question is asking for. So D is going to be my best answer to question number 10. Okay, problem number 11. It says plant A is currently 20 centimeters tall and plant B is currently 12 centimeters tall. The ratio of the heights of plant A to plant B is equal to the ratio of the heights of plant C to plant D. If plant C is 54 centimeters tall, what is the height of plant D in centimeters? And hopefully you can tell that because this is a ratio problem, and it's specifically stated here, but also because of the language. It says plant A to plant B, which generally is expressed in ratios and proportions, and it's usually also shown by this little symbol here. Mathematically, it kind of looks like a colon symbol, and this symbol represents 2, right? So plant A to plant B is equivalent to plant C to plant D in terms of the ratios and proportions. We do know that plant A is going to be 20 centimeters, and we know that plant B is going to be 12 centimeters. Now, theoretically, if I was to break these up into like the smaller units of what they both go into, and I see these both go into 4, so or 4 both go into them is probably the better way of putting it. Now, 20 divided by 4 is going to be 5, and 12 divided by 4 is going to be 3. What I'm doing is trying to simplify what is the smallest unit. So what I'm doing here is trying to simplify what is the smallest unit that each of these go into, because this is then going to be my same ratio here. And it does say that if plant C is 54 centimeters tall, right, so they give me this information, we're trying to figure out what plant D is going to be, right? And I could theoretically divide 54 by 5 and then kind of take that 3 and then really multiply those things, but that's also the same as really just setting up a basic proportion, right? So this here, I'm just trying to explain to you logically of what's happening, but really the simplest way of solving this problem is just setting a proportion where 20 over 12 is going to equal 54 over x. And that's, now notice the 20 and the 54 are on the same side of the expression here, simply because of the fact that these are both the 5 to 5, and the 12 and the x here are both the 3 to 3 in terms of the ratio. So I'm now going to cross multiply. I get 20 times x equals 54 times 12. I'm now going to simplify, and I get x equals 54 over 12 times 20. I theoretically probably would start dividing things in terms of simplifying it, make it a little bit easier, and then I'm going to get x equals 32.4. So A should be my best answer. Okay, problem number 12 says biologists found a new species of pale shrimp at the world's deepest undersea vent. The vent is 3.1 miles below the sea surface. Approximately how many kilometers below the sea surface is the vent? Now, I also quickly understand that they're giving me a unit conversion here. Whenever they're giving you unit conversion and they're asking for something in units, it's 9 out of 10 times going to be some sort of unit conversion problem. So what I want to do is, for any standard unit conversion problem, is I want to start with what is given, right? And then in this case, I'm doing 3.1 miles equals question mark kilometers. So I'm going to start with what is given. I'm now going to take my opposite denominator, right? That's what's going to go on the bottom. And then I'm going to put my other value of what this equals on the top, right? Because these equal each other. So the question is, which of these goes on the bottom when I'm converting to kilometers? And what you want to get is what you want on the top or inside your numerator, and the miles will cancel. That's the point of doing this or setting it up this way in terms of just general unit conversion. 3.1 times 1 divided by 0.6214 is going to give me 4.99 miles. I also notice that it says approximately how many kilometers. So I notice my answer choice here is not exact, and what I'm going to need to do is round. So 5 is really going to be my best answer. So 4.99 miles would round up, so making D my best answer for question number 12. Problem 13 states that a cargo helicopter delivers only 100-pound packages and 120-pound packages. For each delivery trip, the helicopter must carry at least 10 packages, and the total weight of the packages can be at most 1,100 pounds. What is the maximum number of 120-pound packages that the helicopter can carry per trip? Now, what we can gather from quickly reading the problem is that this is going to be a system of inequalities problem. And the reason being is that you notice that you have multiple totals, and what we're going to want to do is move forward and create equations. Also, the language where you see at least 10 packages and also at most 1,100 pounds tells you that the at least as well as the at most are signifying kind of language for inequalities. So let's move forward and let's create the equations. The first is the at least 10 packages equation. Well, at least means that it needs to be greater than or equal to 10. The A and B in this case, and you can either do X or Y, A and B, or any other two variables that you choose, I'm just signifying these as the two units because I have two different types of packages. My at most 1,100 pounds equation is going to then be represented as 120A plus 100B is less than or equal to 1,100. The less than sign is coming from the fact that it says at most. So this needs the total on this side of the equation has to be less than or equal to, right? It can't exceed it cannot be more than or at most, right? 1,100 pounds. Also notice that I just placed the 120A and the 100B here. The A therefore is going to represent the amount or the total number of 120-pound packages, and the B is then going to represent the total amount of 100-pound packages, although I can flip them either way, whatever is easiest. Now, I'm going to purposely set this up so that way I have systems of equations as I'm going through, and I'm probably going to use the substitution method because the A and B here are both singular and there's not a coefficient out in front. So then, because of the fact that I'm trying to solve for the 120-pound packages, which is represented as A, I'm first going to solve and plug in B, meaning that I'm going to solve for B and then I'm going to plug it into my top expression. So here I'm going to take and minus both sides by A, so I get B is greater than or equal to 10 minus A. I'm now going to plug it into my initial equation, and I'm going to get 120A plus 100 times 10 minus A is less than or equal to 1,100. I'm now going to distribute my 100 going through, and I'm going to end up getting 120A plus 1,000 minus 100a is less than or equal to 1100. I'm going to combine my like terms. I get 20a plus 1000. I'm going to subtract 1000 from both sides and get 20a is less than or equal to 100. And yes, by dividing by 20 on both sides, I get a is less than or equal to 5. So I cannot exceed this amount of packages for 120 pounds. And it appears as though, yes, C is therefore going to be my best answer for number 13. Problem number 14 states a company purchased a machine valued at $120,000. The value of the machine depreciates by the same amount each year so that after 10 years, the value will be $30,000. Which of the following equations gives the value V of the machine in dollars T years after it was purchased? Now, what seems to be tricky about this question is that you need to understand really what this says, where it says the value of the machine depreciates by the same amount each year so that after 10 years, the value will be $30,000. Now, this isn't the total value of it. This is the total value of depreciation. So that's an important distinction, meaning that you start with $120,000 initially, and over a 10-year period, the machine will depreciate by a total of $30,000. Taking my initial amount of $120,000 and subtracting my total amount of depreciation, which is $30,000, is now going to give me my new value of $90,000. What they want to know is how much does it depreciate per year? And the reason being is that all of these look as though kind of like y equals mx plus b equations. So I'm trying to figure out essentially kind of what is the slope. So if I do my 90,000 divided by 10 years, I'll get $9,000 per year, and this is going to tell me each year how much it depreciates. So that's where the 9,000 is coming from. Now, my 120,000 is going to be my initial amount. So this is what I'm starting from. The minus sign is representing depreciation. The 9,000 is my amount of depreciation per year, and the T is going to represent years. So you'll notice that these units would actually cancel because it's a rate, right? This is $9,000 per year, and then multiplied by years. The years would end up canceling, which does work out. So B is therefore going to be my best answer for number 14. Number 15 states, line M in the xy plane contains the points 2, 4, and 0, 1. Which of the following is equation of line M? I quickly skim my answer choices. I notice everything is in slope-intercept form. I also see here that I have multiple coordinates, and multiple coordinates generally always refers to the fact that I'm going to use slope-intercept form, and more specifically the y equals mx plus b, and if necessary, my y2 minus my y1 over my x2 minus my x1. Now, quickly understanding, you could actually use this point here for 0, 1. I could plug this in for my x, and then I should get my y coordinate of being 1, which immediately makes D my best answer. But let's pretend we had multiple answer choices where 1 was the y-intercept. And what you'll have to do first is plug in and solve for the slope, knowing that your 4 minus 1 over your 2 minus 0 would give you 3 halves, or 3 over 2. I would then plug in for x equals 0, and when I get x equals 0, I get y equals 3 over 2 times 0 plus b. 3 over 2 times 0 would give me 0, and then I just get 1 equals b. So D is still my best answer, but there's a fast way, but just understanding kind of the general idea of, or a master tip, whenever they give you coordinates, just be prepared to use your slope-intercept form for y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Problem number 16 states that in the expression above, a is a constant. If the expression is equivalent to bx, where b is a constant, what is the value of b? Now, I see a large expression up here for 4x plus 4 multiplied by x minus 1 minus x squared plus 4. But remember, all of this is going to be equivalent to bx. So my goal is to set this equal to bx, and when I do this, I can then isolate and solve for b. But I want to try to think about this a little bit more, because this b here is attached to a singular x, and there's no x squared. So if I actually FOIL these things out and simplify, I'll end up getting my 4ax squared minus my 4x plus 4ax minus 4 minus x squared plus 4. And remember, all of this is equivalent to bx. So what I first want to do is simplify my like terms here, right? So my minus 4 and my plus 4 will end up canceling, and I got 4ax squared minus 4x plus 4ax minus x squared. I now can think to myself, okay, well, how do I group these terms? And the point is, because if I can figure out what goes in front of the singular x when I group these or when I factor, then I can set that equal to b. So I'm going to factor by grouping, and when I do this, I then get 4ax squared minus x squared minus 4x plus 4ax. What you'll notice is I simply moved my minus x squared closer to my 4ax squared. And the reason being is so now I can factor out my x squared for my 4ax squared minus x squared, factor out my x squared, and I get 4a minus 1. And then likewise, for my 4x plus 4ax, I'm going to factor out my x here, and now I have my x times 4a minus 4. Well, if I can understand here that there's no term for my x squared, right? So this 4a minus 1 has to equal 0, then I can use that a and plug it in order to solve for what 4a minus b is going to equal, right? So 4a minus 4 will then equal b, going by kind of what my like terms are going to be. So I'm going to do 4a minus 1 is going to equal 0 because these are both attached to my x squared on opposite sides of the equation. And I'm going to get 4a equals 1. And technically I can solve for a equals 1/4, but what you'll notice is that my 4a is already still here. So I'm now going to take this 1 and I'm going to plug it into my other expression. So I have 4a minus 4, which becomes 1 minus 4 equals b, which then would be negative 3 equals b, right? Because remember, these are singular x's. So my 4a minus 4 is equal to b, and my 4a minus 1 is equal to 0 because these are attached to my x squared and my x respectively, which will make negative 3 equals b my best answer, making b overall my best answer. Problem 17 states if 2w plus 4t equals 14 and 4w plus 5t equals 25, what is the value of 2w plus 3t? I notice immediately that I have two separate equations. So this is a standard kind of systems of equations. I can either do the elimination method or the substitution method. Because of the fact that I have coefficients out in front of all of these equations, I'm generally going to lean more towards the elimination method and finding a common multiple. Now, I'm going to take my top equation here and I'm going to multiply it by negative 2 for the full thing. And the reason I'm doing this is so I can remove my 4, because I'll end up getting negative 4w and also a positive 4w, and then I can add my equations together. But when I distribute my negative 2 throughout, I'm going to get negative 4w minus at equals negative 28. I'm now going to add my equations together in order to remove my 4w, so then I can basically just solve for t. And I'll have 4w plus negative 4w, which is going to give me 0. My 5t plus negative at is going to give me negative 3t. And my 25 plus my negative 28 is going to give me negative 3. When I simplify and solve for t, I'm going to get t equals 1. I can now plug this back in and substitute into my initial expression. I'm going to get 4w plus 5 times 1 equals 25. Remember, the t is coming from what we originally solved for. And then I get 4w plus 5 equals 25. Subtract 5 from both sides. I get 4w equals 20. Then divide by 4. I get w equals 5. Remember, I'm not quite done yet because I have to remember what initially I needed to solve for. So I'm going to plug both of these values in to get 2w plus 3t will equal 2 times 5 plus 3 times 1, which will give me 10 plus 3 equals 13 overall. So 13 will be the answer to number 17, making C your best answer. Problem 18 states, if P% of an adult's daily allowance of potassium is provided by X servings of crunchy grain cereal per day, which of the following expresses P in terms of X? So let's go up here to see if we can decipher a little bit what we're going to need regarding this problem versus what we may need regarding problem 19 or 20. So Jennifer bought a box of crunchy grain cereal. The nutrition facts on the box state that the serving size of the cereal is 3/4 cups and provides 210 calories. It's interesting they don't give you a full cup. They give you 3/4 of the cup, 50 of which are calories from fat. In addition, each serving of the cereal, so now we're down to servings, right, X servings, each serving of the cereal provides 180 milligrams of potassium, which is 5% of the daily allowance for adults. So this tells you that the one serving of this cereal is going to be 5% of the daily allowance of adults. Now, crunchy grain cereal provides 5% of the daily allowance of potassium. X is therefore going to be the number of servings. One serving equals the 5%, which will tell you that 100% is going to be a total daily intake. And then, yeah, it does seem as though it's fairly straightforward, where 5% is then going to be your potassium total daily intake, which is just X number of servings, or let's pretend just kind of like one serving. So P will then equal 5X, making B your best answer overall. Problem 19. On Tuesday, Jennifer will mix crunchy grain cereal with super grain cereal for her breakfast. Super grain cereal provides 240 calories per cup. if the total number of calories in 1 cup of Jennifer's mixture is 270, how much super green cereal is in 1 cup of the mixture? One thing I quickly remember from doing the previous problem is that this is not in 1-to-1 cup ratio, right? This is a 3/4 cup. So the super grain cereal provides 240 calories per cup of what they're giving you here. And the crunchy grain cereal, we don't know how many calories are exactly in 1 cup. So the first thing I have to do before figuring out the mixture is just understand that the crunchy grain cereal is 3/4 cups equals 210 calories, but I need this to be a full cup. So I'm going to set up a quick proportion. So 3/4 cups over 210 calories is going to equal 1 cup times X calories. I'm going to cross multiply. I'm going to get 3/4 cups times X calories equals 210 calories times 1 cup. I would then divide, right, by my 3/4 cup. And I'm going to, when I cross these off in terms of getting the units, I'm now going to figure out how many calories are in exactly 1 cup, basically, of what to expect. So for every 1 cup of my crunchy grain cereal, I will have 280 calories. Now what I'm going to do is combine my mixture. And the way that I'm going to combine my mixture is by setting up a systems of equation. The first equation I'm going to begin to set up, understanding the total calories in 1 cup of the entire mixture, says if the total number of calories in 1 cup of this mixture is 270, this is my first kind of major unit, 270 calories. But I also notice that I have 1 cup. So based off the ratios here, the proportions, right, I'm going to have a certain amount of my crunchy grain cereal and I'm going to have a certain amount of my super grain cereal, right? And together this will give me 1 cup. And I need to figure out how much of this is the super grain cereal. So basically I'm solving for S, right? How much of the super grain cereal is in this 1 cup mixture? And I know that 280 now comes from the amount of calories per 1 cup of my crunchy grain cereal. So I have 280C plus 240S equals 270 calories. Also, quick tip, systems of equations, two totals, right? Two major totals of what I'm doing. So I'm going to use my substitution method because I have C plus S equals 1 cup and I don't have coefficients out in front here. I'm going to solve for C first because remember, I'm trying to solve for S. So I'm going to solve for C and then I'm going to plug it into my 280 expression. So C equals 1 cup minus S. I'm now going to plug this in. I get 280 times 1 cup minus S plus 240S equals 270. I'm now going to distribute my 280. I get 280 minus 280S plus 240S equals 270. I'm now going to combine my like terms and get negative 40S equals negative 10. I subtracted my 280 from both sides. I'm going to divide by negative 40 on both sides, and I get S equals 3/4 cups. So this should be my answer to the question. If they were ever to ask you, well, how much crunchy grain cereal is going to be in this, you would simply just plug this back in. And you know that S is going to be 1/4 cups, making crunchy grain cereal the other 3/4 of the mixture. So the mixture is consisting of 1/4 cups of super grain cereal and 3/4 cups of the crunchy grain cereal. But because the question once again is stating just for super grain, B is going to be my answer to number 19. Question 20 states, which of the following could be the graph of the number of calories from fat in crunchy grain cereal as a function of the number of 3/4 cup servings of the cereal? Well, we do remember that it is consisting of 280 calories. It does ask for fat, but whenever we're interpreting graphs, the first thing we want to pay attention to is really where the zero is, right? Because that will help us understand what the initial kind of mark is. And the biggest understanding of this problem is that notice that some of these don't start at 0, right? Now, remember, if you don't consume any servings, you theoretically should not have any calories. And there's only one answer choice that does that, which is A. And theoretically, it should keep increasing kind of respectively. Each serving increases by the calories by 250, but A is the most obvious answer choice because it's the only one that starts at 0. And if I don't consume any of the servings, theoretically, then I'm not going to have any calories. But also notice, just in case if they ask, it is a constant positive slope, and as the amount of servings increases, the amount of calories will increase. Just in general, in terms of what is the relationship of the x and the y for the graph, if they were to ask something specifically in terms of what the relationship is. A is going to be your best answer to number 20. Problem number 21 states the graph of the exponential function h in the xy plane where y equals h of x has a y-intercept of d, where d is a positive constant, which of the following could define the function f? Whenever you see the words could define, really what you want to think about immediately is, and because of the fact that they're stating your y-intercept, you really want to understand where an x equals 0. So what you want to do is plug in 0 here for the x's, and what you're hopefully trying to accomplish is that y will be equal to d when you're plugging in x equals 0. So let's plug in some x equals 0s. And remember, what we're looking for is that your h of x is going to equal d, because that's what your y will equal, so when x equals 0. Now, when we plug this into the initial equation, we see that h of x equals -3, d to the 0 power, because x here is an initial exponent. Anything to the 0 power is going to be 1. So this becomes h of x equals -3 times 1, which will give me h of x equals -3. That's not what we're looking for. Remember, we're trying to get this equal to d for h of x. So this is not going to be a possible solution, so I would cross off A. Moving to B, this is h of x equals -3 times my 0 now when I plug this in, times d. Anything multiplied by 0 is just simply going to become 0, so this 2 is not going to work. Similarly, c is just, this is a positive x, but this is just a negative x, but this would still be a 0, so this won't work. So I'm going to immediately move down to d. This says h of x equals d times 3 to the power of x. Well, if I plug in 0 here for my x, this becomes 3 to the power of 0, which becomes 1. So this becomes h of x equals d times 1, which, yes, does work. Making the answer to number 21, h of x equals d, and d being the best answer to this question. Problem number 22 states, the weights in pounds for 15 horses in a stable were reported, and the mean, median, range, and standard deviation for the data were found. The horse with the lowest reported weight was found to actually weigh 10 pounds less than its reported weight. What value remains unchanged if the 4 values are reported using their corrected weight? This problem is really asking you, 1, do you understand what mean, median, range, and standard deviation are? And 2, if we take the lowest value out of a data set, what value essentially remains unchanged? That's really what this question is asking you. So let's review kind of some basics of statistics. The first is the mean, the median, the mode, the range, and the standard deviation are generally what the SAT touches upon. The mean is the average of the data set. The median is the middle value of the data set when the numbers or the values are in numerical order. The mode is going to be the value that occurs most often. On the SAT, they commonly use the word frequent or frequency. Range is going to be your highest minus your lowest value, and standard deviation is the measure of how spread out the values are from the mean, or how distributed or scattered the values are. One thing you should immediately note is that the range will change, because if I'm changing the lowest value from highest minus the lowest, the range is definitely going to change. So this is not going to be a possible answer choice. The mean will also most likely change, simply because of the fact that I'm changing the amounts, right, in terms of the overall sum. The mode may change, but notice mode purposely is not a part of the answer, or a part of the answer solution. So you're going for the most obvious. Now, if the mean is going to change, then the standard deviation is also going to be most likely to change in terms of like what could possibly happen. What value remains unchanged is most likely going to be the median. And here's the reason why. If we remove, or if we change the lowest reported value out of a data set of 15 values, so notice here we've lined up 1, 2, 3, 4, right, all the way through 15. And if I simply replace my lowest value with another lowest value, my mean is, or my median is still going to be 8. I'll have 7 values on the left, and I'll have 7 values on the right, right? And 8 will be my median, or my middle value of the entire data set, once all of my data points are lined up in numeric order. If I'm simply just replacing my lowest value with another lowest value, then it's still good. My 8th value of the data set is still going to be my median overall. So B should be my best answer for question number 22. Problem 23 states, near the end of the U.S. cable news show, the host invited viewers to respond to a poll on the show's website that asked, do you support the new federal policy discussed during the show? At the end of the show, the host reported that 28% responded yes and 70% responded no. Which of the following best explains why the results are unlikely to represent the sentiments of the population of the United States? One master tip I'll tell you is that whenever they are giving you some sort of surveys and studies or observationals type of question, and a survey is usually a huge giveaway, then what you want to really pay attention to is the fact that you have random sampling, You have unbiased questions or unbiased audience, unbiased location as well, and you have a large sample size. The SAT typically prefers like over 100 participants. Random sampling is definitely huge, and you want to make sure that it is a good collection of unbiased questions and where you are getting the audience from or where you're getting the participants from. Now, in this case, they're telling you it's unlikely. So they're telling you the results really won't work, or they're kind of invalidated. The question is why? And before we go down to the answer choices, let's sort of try to interpret what is happening here. It says near the end of the US cable news show, the host invited viewers. And what we need to think about is where these viewers are coming from, right? Because it says, which of the following best explains why the results are unlikely to represent the sentiments of the population of the entire United States? Well, it's probably because of the fact that this sampling size is only taking from viewers of the show who just happen to complete their results, right? So the question is referring to the entire United States, not just individuals who are watching the show. And it only polled viewers of the show who were really willing to respond. Not even everyone from the show polled, right? Not even everyone completed it. So it's definitely invalidated because it's not sampling the entire United States. It's only sampling individuals who watched the show and who are willing to respond. So B is going to be your best answer, because those who've responded to the poll were not a random sample of the overall population of the United States. B is going to be your answer to number 23.
Problem 24 states, if f of x equals 5x squared minus 3 and f of x plus a equals 5x squared plus 30x plus 42, what is the value of a? Now, what you could understand is that if I were to plug in a value here, right, in terms of my x for my input, then I just have to make sure to plug in that value corresponding for the other x. Now, because of the fact that they're already telling you that so f of x plus a is going to equal this value overall, theoretically, if I plug in an x plus a here, then I could do 5 times x plus a squared and then minus 3 and set those two values equal to each other in order to figure out what a is going to be when simplifying. So let's do that. So I'm going to take my x plus a and I'm going to plug this in here, which I'll then get 5 times x plus a squared minus 3. Now I'm going to FOIL this out first, and I'm going to end up getting 5 times x plus a minus 3, and when I FOIL this, I'm going to get 5 times x squared plus xa plus a squared. The x times the x will give me my x squared. The x times the a will give me a positive xa, and then a times x will give me another positive xa, and then finally a times a will give me my a squared, given the fact that I'm FOILing. And then my minus 3 just comes down to be my minus 3. So now I'm going to combine my like terms here to give me 2xa, and I'm going to distribute the 5 throughout. So I get 5x squared plus 10ax plus 5a squared minus 3, and I'm going to bring this value down because remember, after all of these things are equivalent. And I'm going to end up simplifying and solving for a, or trying to get a by itself. I'm going to take my minus 3, I'm going to bring it over to the other side to end up getting positive 45, and I get 5x squared plus 10ax plus 5a squared equals 5x squared plus 30x plus 45. Now, when I move forward in the equation, I'm going to end up canceling out my 5x squares on both sides. What I notice here is that my 10ax is going to be equivalent to my 30x because this is a singular x or an x to the first. So 10a is going to be equivalent to 30, and my x's will essentially kind of cancel. So when I set these equal to each other, right, then I'm going to get 10ax equals 30x, and then I finally would divide, right, both sides by x or 10x, and then this would simplify to be 3 over 1, which would simplify to be 3. So A is then going to be 3 to answer this question, so C is going to be my best possible answer for question number 24. Problem number 25 states, if sine of x equals a, which of the following must be true for all values of x? Now what we're going to attempt to do is skim the answer choices here. I see cosine, sine, and I notice it says must be true, so I'm going to choose the answer that's the most obvious choice. One quick thing that I'll remind you of is that the moment you see sine and cosine, you always want to think SOHCAHTOA, which is that fact that the sine of a theta is opposite over hypotenuse, the cosine of theta is the adjacent over the hypotenuse, and the tan of the theta is the opposite over the adjacent, which is what SOHCAHTOA stands for. Now, the sine of an angle is going to be equivalent to the cosine of that angle's complement, and the complement is going to be both of those angles equaling 90 degrees. Basically, the sine plus the cosine of those angles is going to equal 90 degrees. And that's sort of a quick rule to kind of help you, which means that in this case, the sine of x being a means that cosine 90 minus x is then going to be equivalent to a. Now one quick tip that I'll mention on the SAT is the moment that you see 90 minus x, this is always referring to the other angle when referring to a triangle, right? So 90 is generally going to be your right angle. The x is always referring to the angle that they're generally referring to in the beginning, and meaning that if there's only 3 angles, that the remaining angle is going to be referring to the other angle, so the third angle in the triangle. And let's sort of give an example to kind of walk this through, just in case you don't remember kind of the memorization of the property. Let's pretend you have a 3, 4, 5 triangle here, and let's just designate one side as being kind of sine of a in this case. So if this is a, in here in terms of my chosen angle, then the opposite is going to be 3, and my adjacent will then be 4, and my hypotenuse will also be 5, right? And sine of a is going to be my opposite over my hypotenuse. So sine of a becomes 3 over 5. Now, according to this property, it's saying that these are going to be equal if we're talking about cosine of the other angle. So the other angle in this instance is going to be c. So let's talk about doing cosine of c. Well, remember, what is defined as the opposite is always opposite of the referenced angle. So the opposite in this case, when we're referring to c, is going to be 4, which makes the adjacent then 3, and my hypotenuse 5. So for the cosine of c, because of the fact that cosine of a theta is equal to adjacent over hypotenuse, my cosine of c is then going to be 3 over 5, which, yes, is equivalent to my sine of a, because my sine of a is my opposite over my hypotenuse, whereas the cosine is my adjacent over my hypotenuse. So these two things do equal each other, and because they do, c is going to be your best possible answer. Problem 26 states, the quadratic function above models the height above the ground, h, in feet of a projectile x seconds after it had been launched vertically. If y equals h of x is graphed in the xy plane, which of the following represents the real-life meaning of the positive x-intercept of the graph? Because of the fact that they're asking for the x-intercept, you definitely want to pay attention to an x-intercept is where y is going to equal 0. And because they're asking for x-intercept, that means that you're looking for not only where y will equal 0, but x is going to be in units of seconds. If they were asking for the 10 or if they were asking for the y-intercept, then you'd be looking for units of feet. But in this instance, we're looking for units of seconds because they're looking for the x-intercept. And your answer choices here say the initial height of the projectile, the maximum height, the time at which the projectile reaches its maximum height, and the time at which the projectile hits the ground. Because of the fact that we're referring to x and it's in units of seconds, C and D are immediately part of the chosen answer choices. A and B are most likely going to be crossed off because these are both referring to height. Because of the fact that we're looking for where y equals 0 and it is no longer above the ground and it's actually hitting the ground in units of seconds, this answer choice here for your x-intercept is actually going to refer to D, the time at which the projectile hits the ground. So the projectile is going to go up in the air, and essentially it's going to come down at a certain time, and 0 will be the height because now it is on the ground and is no longer above the ground. So D is going to be your best answer for number 26. Problem 27 states, in the xy plane, the graph of the polynomial function f crosses the x-axis at exactly 2 points, a of 0 and b of 0, where a and b are both positive. Which of the following functions could define f? Now, quick takeaway, it does say exactly 2 points, so really what we're referring to is that both of these points, given the fact of your coordinates here of what you can see regarding a and b, is that both of these are going to show that y will equal 0. And because these are the coordinates that are provided to you for a of 0 and b of 0, you can then tell that a and b are both going to be positive roots. Now, quickly, what is a root? Now, let's pretend here we have x minus a and x minus b in terms of our general function. If I were to set y equal to 0, which they do here, right, for both of the points, and you can tell that by the coordinate, but also where it's going to cross the x-axis for y being 0, then let's work backwards. Right? If I have x minus a equal to 0 and if I have x minus b equal to 0 as such, then my points will therefore be a equals x and x equals b. Now, working backwards from what we can tell, for here we have our positives. These are technically going to be our roots, and x minus a and x minus b will then be our factors. And it's talking about which 2 points where this would actually occur. And if I look at my possible answer choices, it looks as though A is going to be your best answer choice because it's f of x equals x minus a multiplied by x minus b, and that is the case. So that is going to be correct because these are our positive roots, and the x minus a and x minus b are going to be our factors when we set y equal to 0, knowing that that's where it's crossing the x-axis. So for 27, A is going to be your best answer. For question 28, it says, if y equals 3x squared plus 6x plus 2 is graphed in the xy plane, which of the following characteristics of the graph is displayed as a constant or coefficient in the equation? And what we want to try to do without having to pull out our calculator is see if we can figure something out quickly that makes sense where it's displayed inside of the equation. And one quick tip we'll always give you is that if you were to plug in, let's say, an x equals 0 or a y equals 0, is anything pretty evident. And majority of the time, the easiest thing to find is always going to be what is your y-intercept, meaning if you plug in your x equals 0, right? Because if I plug in my x equals 0 here, I get 3 times my 0 squared plus 6 times 0, well then plus 2, well anything times 0 is going to be 0, so then I'm going to get y equals 2. So this is the only thing that's really visible quickly inside of the graph. Is this a possible answer choice? Yes, so C is going to be your best answer for number 28. For question 29, it says the scatter plot above shows the federal mandated minimum wage every 10 years between 1940 and 2010. A line of best fit is shown, and its equation is y equals 0.096x minus 0.488. What does the line of best fit predict about the increase in the minimum wage over the 70-year period? So it's really asking you, what is the line of best fit? Like, what does this represent? Hopefully it registers that the y equals 0.096x minus 0.488 is really equivalent to a slope, and the 0.096 is what your slope is going to be, and the 0.488 is what your y-intercept is going to be. The y is obviously the y-coordinate, and the x is the x-coordinate, and this is just a standard kind of y equals mx plus b equation. So your starting value here being the 0.488, and it's asking, what does the line of best fit predict about the increase in the minimum wage? So what does it do regarding the increase in the minimum wage? Well, we see it's a steady trend, right? It's steady increasing as you pick between the 2 points, and it's an increasing linear line. So it predicts that for each year between 1940 and 2010, the minimum wage will increase by $0.096 per hour. Where did I get the dollars from? I got the dollars from the minimum wage here. So the minimum wage is a rise, right? And then over your run, which is your x value. So it's a change in y over a change in x, which would make your answer choice for this to be A. So each year between 1940 and 2010, the average increase in minimum wage was $0.096, and this being realistic of your slope. Problem number 30 states, the scatter plot above shows a company's ice cream sales D in dollars and the high temperature T in degrees Celsius. On 12 different days, a line of best fit for the data is also shown. Which of the following could be the equation of the line of best fit? Because of the fact that I see the line here being represented as a linear function, I'm immediately going to register this as being a slope-intercept form for y equals mx plus b. The m, obviously, is going to be my slope, which hopefully I could pick out 2 points here that are fairly able to discern. I'm going to pick points that are kind of going to purposely fall. Probably the easiest to pick out, I would probably say this location here for, let's say, 22 and 800 or 810, and here being, I would say, 12, and most likely I would say this is like 490 or 480, somewhere in that range. And my y value is my y value, my x value is my x value, my b is going to be my starting value, or where x equals 0. So plugging in your slope. So slope is going to equal y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. When I plug this in, I'm going to purposely take my y2s and I'm going to subtract from my y1s, which is going to be 810 minus 480. And then my x2 minus my x1 is going to be 22 minus 12, given the fact of the 2 points that I've focused on. And when I simplify this, this is going to be 330 over 10, One major thing you want to pay attention to is that this is an approximate. It says which of the following could be an equation of the line of best fit, or they might say like which approximately accounts for the line of best fit. It might not be exact, but you're choosing answer choices that are most related. I got pretty lucky in choosing answers where the 33 will be the slope that's shown. And if say for instance I chose like 32, then obviously I'm going to fall closer to C and D than I would right A and B. So just using process elimination here, use some logic as you're going through. So now I'm focusing on C and D in terms of my answer choices. And the question is, how do you figure out B, right? How do you figure out what your y-intercept is going to be? And the way that you figure out any y-intercept is you simply want to plug in, right, for your x. So choose a coordinate to solve for B. And right, x of 0 isn't going to be shown, as you can see here. So I'm going to choose my other coordinate. So y equals mx plus b. And then as I plug these in, right, I'm going to choose my smaller coordinate because that might be easier, right, as I do this, right, my first coordinate. So here I have 480 equals 33 times 12, right, plus b. And as I move forward, it's 480 equals 396 plus b. I'm going to subtract the 396 from both sides, and I'm going to get b is approximately 84. So I should have a slope of 33 and b equals 84, and that makes D my best answer. Now the reason why I had to plug these in order to sort of solving my equation is because I don't have an x equals 0 in this instance. If I had x equals 0, then yes, I could kind of look at the graph visually, but because of the fact that I don't have an x equals 0 on my graph, I actually need to plug these in by choosing two coordinates in order to solve what B would have been. Problem 31 takes us to the open-ended questions, and the major things you have to recall regarding the open-ended are that the answers must be positive, there's no radians or pi inside of your answer choices, and there's no radicals inside of your answer. So looking down here at problem 31, it says in the xy plane above, the circle has a center of hk and a radius of 10. What is the value of k? Now, like many problems on the SAT, there's always going to be multiple ways to do this problem, but hopefully you recall, and given the fact that you see here the equation of a circle and really the h of k expression, is that you generally want to use the equation of a circle in some capacity. And the reason I say this is because h and k represent the center of your circle, right? The h and the k represent the center, and the r is going to represent the radius. So the equation of a circle is going to be x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. And the distances will be equivalent between the 2 points, or in the middle, which means that hk 220 and hk 240, these will be equivalent, right? And because this will be equivalent, being that both of these are radii, that means the center of the 4 and the 20 is actually going to be the center of this line here. And if by doing that, you can solve for h, right? You can solve what this coordinate is going to be. And you would do this by doing h equals 20 plus 4 over 2, right? So 24 divided by 2, which will give you half, and that's 12. Understanding that we now have h as well as r, and we're attempting to solve for k, let's plug everything into our equation. So let's plug in h and r, and let's also then follow up and plug in our x and y coordinates. So h is 12, r equals 10, x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. I then will choose which of these coordinates I want to plug in. I can either plug in 4 and 0, or I can plug in 20 and 0. I'm going to try to keep it simple, and I'm going to plug in 4 and 0 here for my x's, my y values. That's where my x here is becoming 4, my y here is becoming 0. So I get 4 minus 12 squared plus 0 minus k squared equals 10 squared. When I simplify this, I get negative 8 squared plus negative k squared equals 10 squared. I will then get 64 plus k squared. Notice the negative k times negative k becomes a positive k squared, and my 10 squared becomes 100. When I subtract my 64 on both sides, I will get 100 minus 64, which will give me 36, and my k squared comes down. So I'll get k squared equals 36. I'm then going to take the radical of both sides, and I'm going to get k is going to equal plus or minus 6. And remember, because of the fact that my answer to the open-ended is going to need to be positive, and the fact that I'm in the first quadrant, as you can see here, being my 4 and my 20, then my answer is not going to be negative 6. Instead, it's going to be positive 6. So k is going to equal 6 for question number 31. Problem 32 states, in the xy plane, line L has a y-intercept of negative 13 and is perpendicular to the line with the equation y equals negative 2/3 x. if the point 10b is on line L, what is the value of b? Now, let's see if we can kind of break this down a little bit. Where it says it has a y-intercept of -13, that means that's where x is going to equal 0. And then it says is perpendicular to the line with the equation y equals -2, 3x. The perpendicular is to represent that the slopes are negative reciprocals of each other. So let's start first by determining what that slope of the line is. So let's take the slope of this line here, which is y equals -2/3 x, and let's take the -2/3, which is the slope here, and let's convert it to be the perpendicular of the new line. So -2/3, if I'm going to make this perpendicular by making this the negative reciprocal, I'm going to change the sign and I'm basically going to flip it upside down, right, like the fraction. And as I change the sign, the -2/3 becomes positive and the 2/3 becomes 3/2. So my new slope to my other line is going to represent 3/2, right? So 3/2. I'm going to take the value of my new slope, right, of the new line, and I'm going to plug this in along with my other coordinates, x being 10 and y being b. So when I plug this in for y equals mx plus b, I'm now going to notice this y here is actually going to become a b, and this then becomes b equals 3/2, right, this being the new slope based upon the perpendicular from the previous line. 10 is what my x value is, and then -13, because it says what is the value of b. So b being this instance for what is really the y coordinate. And as I simplify this, this becomes, right, 3 times 10 is 30 over 2, which gives me 15. 15 minus 13 is then going to be 2. And b, better yet, the y coordinate on this point is going to be 2. So 2 is your answer for number 32. Problem 33 states, human blood can be classified into 4 common blood types, A, B, AB, and O. It's also categorized by the presence or absence of the rhesus factor. The table above shows the distribution of blood type and rhesus factor for a group of people. If one of these people who is rhesus negative is chosen at random, the probability that the person has blood type B is 1/9. It wants to know what is the value of x. So quickly skimming up to my table, I see x here is a part of the overall negative group of really O, but quickly notice that O, AB, B, and A, all negative, are all a part of the negative group, right, in total. It does say, and as we're understanding probability, right, probability is the number of desired outcomes over the number of possible outcomes, and knowing that we full well generally want to start with the denominator, it says if one of these people who is rhesus negative is chosen at random, which means this is my smaller subgroup, so this is going to be my denominator, meaning all of the negative people will be my denominator. It does tell you that it's 1/9, so my overall probability is going to be 1/9. My denominator is going to be all of the rhesus negative people from all the different blood groups, and I want to know what is the probability that that person is going to be blood type B rhesus negative. So when I plug these things in, right, understanding where the position of x is going to be, it's going to be 1/9 over 2. 2 here is coming from the fact that I'm for blood type B as such, right? And then here's all my rhesus negative people. So 7, 2, 1, and x. I'm now going to cross multiply. And as I cross multiply, I'm going to do 1 times 10 plus x and 9 times 2, which is going to give me 10 plus x equals 18. I'm now going to subtract 10 from both sides, and I'm going to end up getting x equals 8. And x equals 8 should be my answer for question number 33. Problem 34 states, based on the graph above, in how many games played did the soccer team score goals equal to the median number of goals for the 29 games? Now, when you're trying to find the median, and something to recall from basic statistics, is that the median is going to equal the middle value of the data set when the values are in numerical order. Because my number of goals scored here are already from 0 to 7, what I want to do is figure out in how many games did I score 1 goal and how many games did I score 2 goals, right? So here I see 8 games with 1 goal, 9 different games with 2 goals, my 6 different games with 3 goals. I have, it looks as though 3 different games with 4, 2 different games with 5, and finally 1 game with 7 goals. So as I line up all of my values, I then want to start to cross off my first with my last and beginning to work my way towards the middle. As I do this, then I will notice that 2 is going to be the median of my data set. And I want to go back to the question because I want to recall that it says how many games of played, right, is equal to the median number of goals scored. So really what it's asking is how many games did they play where they scored equal to the number of median goals. So they played 9 different games, which either you can see here, or even by counting, you'll have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, right? So they played 9 different games where they scored 2 goals, which is equal to the median of the data set. So 2 is going to be your answer for question number 34. Problem 35 states, Gisela would owe $15,500 in taxes each year if she were not eligible for any tax deductions. This year, Giselle is eligible for tax deductions that reduce the amount of taxes she owes by $2,325. If these tax deductions reduce the taxes Giselle owes this year by D%, what is the value of D? So let's see if we can break this down a little bit. We know that the current amount owed, or the original amount owed, was $15,500. She then was able to deduct, right, even more from this, which is $2,325. So that means that the new amount owed, if you take the difference between these things, is going to be $13,175. The reason why I'm specifying these things is because this is a standard percent difference kind of question. And the SAT may ask it in several different ways, but in general, you just want to understand that the percent difference is equal to the original minus the new over the original. Now, the original being 15,500 in this instance, and the new being 13,175. Granted, they already did give you the difference here, which is the 2,325. However, I'm just specifying these things that way if they were to give you other pieces of information for future problems, you can kind of understand it's a percent difference equation or question. So percent difference in this instance is going to be 15,500 minus 13,175 over 15,500 times 100. When you plug this into your calculator, you'll end up getting that D% is going to be equivalent to 15% when you multiply this out, which means therefore that D is going to be equal to 15. Quick note that because of the fact that we're in the open-ended section, you do not actually have the percentage as a part of your answer, which means that when they say D% and is going to be equivalent to 15%, that means that D is going to be equal to 15. So 15 will be your answer for 35. For problem number 36, I see stacked equations or systems of equations above. It says the systems of equations above has no solutions. If A and B are constants, what is the value of A over B? I always want to quickly pay attention to the fact that no solutions refers to parallel lines. And parallel lines means that fact that I'm going to have the same slopes. And essentially what I want to do in order to solve this is I want to convert my equations to slope-intercept form. Now, starting with my first equation, I have ax minus by equals 9. I'm going to bring over my ax to get y by itself, and I get negative by equals 9 minus ax. I'm then going to divide both sides by negative b, and I get y equals 9 over negative b minus a over negative bx. This is actually great because I end up getting y equals 9 over negative b plus abx. And that's great because here I already have this set up in terms of the format of ab. And theoretically, if I figure out the slope of this line, and because these are no solutions referring to parallel lines, that means that they will have the same slope. So basically, if I figure out the slope of this line, and if I match it to AB, then that is what the value of AB is going to be. So let's figure out the slope. So here we have 3/4 x minus 1/2 y equals 12. I'm going to subtract my 3/4 over. I get negative 1/2 y equals 12 minus 3/4. Now to get rid of this negative 1/2, I'm going to multiply everything by negative 2. Now this is going to end up giving me y equals negative 24 plus 6/4 x, and this will simplify to become y equals negative 24 plus 3/2 x. And what you want to recall is that these slopes are going to be equivalent to each other because of the fact that this systems of equations has no solutions, which means the lines are parallel. So their slopes will be the same. And by converting them both to your slope-intercept form, you can understand that ABX is going to be equivalent to 3/2x, which means the value of AB is going to be 3 over 2. So 3 over 2 will be my answer for number 36. Problem number 37 states, based on the information given in the table, how much greater in millions was the median number of international tourist arrivals to the top 9 tourist destinations in 2013 than the median number in 2012 to the nearest tenth of a million? Now, obviously what you want to recall regarding the median, it's the middle value of the data set when the values are in numerical order. So you want to quickly check when lining up 2012 as well as 2013, what are the numerical values of counting? And because of the fact that you do see there's 9 tourist destinations, you want to quickly remember the median of 9 is going to be the 5th value. For 2012, I'm going to have 24.7, 26.3, 30.4, 35.7, and 46.4. So 46.4 is going to be my median of 2012, given my nine values. I'm picking the 5th highest value. For 2013, I'm going to have 28.4, 31.5, 32.2, 37.8, and 47.7. So 47.7 is going to be my median of 2013. I need to take the difference between these two values. And when I do this, I get 47.7 minus 46.4 equals 1.3. I want to quickly pay attention to the fact that the question asks for the nearest tenth of a million. So 1.3 should work, given the fact that these are in millions, and this is the nearest tenth for 1.3. So 1.3 should be my answer for question number 37. So problem 38 states the number of international tourist arrivals in Russia in 2012 was 13.5% greater than in 2011. The number of international tourist arrivals in Russia was K million more in 2012 than in 2011. So the K million more is also going to be equivalent to the 13.5% greater than. What was the value of K to the nearest integer? Now, I also quickly noticed that there's no 2011 according to my table here. So I have to use my 2012 values and then kind of work back from that, because here I only have 2013. So labeling 2011 and 2012, I'm just going to say question mark for 2011, and my 2012 is 24.7 according to my Russia values here for my 24.7. So my 2011 values I'm going to represent as X. My 2012 values I'm going to represent as Y. And I'm going to say this is equivalent to K million more regarding the difference. So my goal out of doing this is to figure out how many did I have in 2011. And then I can take the difference overall, because it says what is the value of K to the nearest integer, knowing this is an actual number, right? So Y, which is my 2012 value, is going to equal to 1.135x. The 0.135 is coming from the 13% greater than. So Y is going to be my 2012 value equals 1.135 times my 2011 value. When I do the math and I plug in my coordinates, I will get 24.7 divided by 1.135 equals X. And X is going to be 21.8. So this is the value of my number of international tourists for 2011 corresponding to Russia. Now, I want to solve the difference between these values, and I get 24.7 minus 21.8 is going to equal 2.9 million. I want to quickly scan back. It says, what is the value of K to the nearest integer? Integer being a whole number and not necessarily a decimal. So I want to then solve for the nearest integer being 3 million. And 3 million is going to be my answer. And this is already in units of millions, so 3 is realistically going to be my answer. Okay, so thanks for watching, and please remember to contact us at info@embracetutoring.com to set up any personalized private tutoring sessions you would like. Stay tuned for future videos, and best of luck with your studies. We definitely encourage you to visit our Instagram as well as TikTok pages if you have any questions along the way. Take care, guys. Best of luck with your studies.